Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. When was the last time you took a family road trip? Especially one that was just for fun. Unfortunately, the family road trip seems to be somewhat of a dying art. It was something that was sacred to our family growing up, and we want to make sure it stays alive and well, especially in uncertain times. After living a life on the road, I can tell you that getting out of the city and into the wilderness can be an amazing reset for your body, your mind, and your spirit. All of that crazy brain-zapping city energy that we're assaulted with, all that marketing and the billboards and the colors and the shapes and the sounds and all of the just manic stuff. Our brain is not used to it. Our bodies aren't used to it. In ancestral terms, this is all completely unprecedented stuff. The amount of zaniness, especially that's presented by technology, and the fact that so many of us don't really get a break. So, more than ever, it's time to take a break, take that risk, and especially go out to somewhere that's a little bit more remote. Get away from those city centers because, we all know that that's a mess out there. So today we're here with Chris and Holly Santillo, who are a great example of doing something that violates common sense, perhaps, but also is a great example of courage in getting away from the norms, getting away from the normal thing to do, and embracing a life of opportunity, adventure, and education, especially with their young ones. Together, Chris and Holly have been working with and educating children for over 35 years, and they've traveled the country and the world as nomads with their 3 kids, which is a lot easier said than done, as anyone with kids obviously knows. But here's just a little bit of background about the two of them. Chris is the founder and head instructor of Potomac Kempo, a martial arts studio, and Holly is the founding conductor of Mount Vernon Children's Choir and a senior instructor at Potomac Kempo. I want to share a note that came in from Clara. She says, "Hello, Abel and Allison. I found you this year by chance, and I am so happy I did. All of my life, I've been very interested in health. When I was younger, I was obsessed with losing weight, but I always found it difficult to find reliable information, and I know that is what I always get from listening to your podcast. You have many great guests along with your insights and great questions in a very understandable format. I have hypothyroidism, and I have learned that I really have to keep a balanced lifestyle even when taking my meds. I feel that we as a society have to always keep well informed about our food sources because the food that we take in can be harmful to us personally, our family, society, and the environment. So thank you so much. Please keep going forward with your work. Clara." Clara, thank you so much for writing in the kind words and for sharing this. Some of you might not be aware that hypothyroidism actually runs in my family. My mother, a holistic nurse practitioner and herbalist, and a big, reason why I'm doing this. She was also an early guest on this show, who'll be appearing again. She has struggled with hypothyroidism for years now, and I struggled with my thyroid in my 20s. I definitely have to keep an eye on it because it does run in the family. So I can definitely empathize and sympathize there. And there are a few things that we're discovering. Red light therapy and near infrared light therapy can actually help stimulate the thyroid, especially for sluggish thyroids. Go check out near infrared and red light therapy, and definitely listen to the most recent episode of Fat Burning Man with the co-founder of Juve. And if you have a question or you just want to get in touch with me and share some of your results, then go to fatburningman.com, make sure you're signed up for the newsletter, and reply to my email. Of course, we are here to help, and if that's what you're looking for, then check out the Wild Diet Fat Loss System. In the program, you'll get the art of meal and nutrient timing to best stimulate fat loss and muscle recovery, ridiculously tasty recipes and meal plans so you can enjoy chicken parmesan, chocolate pudding, and even cheesecake while dropping fat. You'll learn the truth about how much protein you really need each day. You'll get 30 days of fat-burning wild diet meal plans to get you rapid results and tons more. So go and get your listener discount and start shedding fat with delicious food today. Just type in fatburningman.com/30 days. That's fatburningman.com/30 days. You can also go to fatburningman.com and look at the store and find our courses and books and some of my music albums and other crazy projects over in the store at fatburningman.com. And some of you may not even be aware that I have whole other projects, especially the more artistically focused ones over at abeljames.com. That's ABEL James.com. And if you're looking for a deal on our favorite supplements in the universe, then make sure to visit wildsuperfoods.com. I'm sorry, folks, right now it's only in the US. Hopefully we'll be able to get this out to you international folks as well soon. But in any case, if you're in the US, Wild Superfoods is where it's at. We're throwing deals on Future Greens, Mega Omegas, our vitamin D stack, and many more immune boosting goodies that are coming up soon, as well as more delicious things. And I don't want to spoil it right now, but be sure to stay tuned, sign up for our newsletter, and visit wildsuperfoods.com. Every purchase from there directly supports this show. We've been taking these supplements, my family, my wife, and our closest friends, for many years now, and I really do believe that they've done us good. And in uncertain times when it's difficult to get nutrients, especially on the road, or some of us don't have access close to our houses, including us in a lot of cases, one of the most critical parts of health is being prepared and having the right foods around you and the right nutrients around you at the right times. So you'll learn a lot about that in this particular show with Chris and Holly. So let's just get right into it. We're talking about how to raise children that are strong, adaptable, and have the ability to recover from setbacks, how to eat and train on the road, how to turn mistakes into learning opportunities, the power of teaching integrity through story, and much more. Let's go hang with Chris and Holly. All right, folks, Chris Santillo is the founder and head instructor at Potomac Kempo, a martial arts studio with 4 locations in Alexandria, Virginia. Holly Santillo is the founding conductor of Mount Vernon Children's Choir and a senior instructor at Potomac Kempo. Together, they've been working with and educating children for over 35 years, and right now they're traveling the country and the world as nomads with their 3 kids. So thank you so much for joining us, especially on your trip, guys.
Oh, thanks for having us.
Abel, we are so happy to be here with you. Thank you.
Right on. So how's the trip going so far? You guys are kind of in the maiden voyage stage right now, right?
Yeah, we're about 36 hours in. So
is that all? Oh my gosh.
It just feels like a long weekend so far, but we don't have a home to go back to, so that makes it a little more interesting.
Yeah. I realize that I kind of have this ghost house and ghost minivans in my mind, so I haven't really quite come to terms with the fact that it's not there yet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
I do.
It's a while before that really sinks in.
For sure. Yeah, let's see. Back in 2014, 2015, my wife and I sold and donated everything and then traveled the world for about 2 years living out of a 5th-wheel trailer when we were in North America and just out of, bags when we were other places. And it was
exactly the same.
Yeah, one of the best learning experiences of our lives. It felt like 20 years went by in 2. You know what I mean?
Is that a good thing?
A good thing. Yeah. Like life experience wise. I don't know though. We're not bringing 3 kids, so we'll see.
Right? Someone has to carry the bag.
Yeah, exactly.
3 best kids on the planet. Pretty much so.
Just don't tell them we said so.
Yeah, careful.
Don't want to spoil.
I was talking to one of my best friends recently, who I had on the podcast. One of my best friends and teammates from high school, Will McDonough, and we talked about how some of the things that you get into as a kid just really stick with you, and some don't, right? He's a teacher now, and when you read about geography or when you read about some place or some culture, it's hard to make it stick a lot of the time, especially when you're a kid. But when you actually go to a place, it changes everything. My brother actually just came out like a couple of weeks ago, and he's just like, honestly, I didn't really know. I realized that I don't know that much about the geography of America, even because I haven't looked at it since elementary school, and it was his first time in the West before. And I was just like, I totally get that, because before we had actually driven to Kansas and Wisconsin and just like all these places that were just kind of nebulous before. There's no way to put it in your brain really. So what you guys are doing just seems so important and so valuable right now, especially for kids growing up in a very uncertain world.
Yeah,
But I very much feel the same way, that there are things and concepts and people and places out there that I hear about all the time on the news.
Mm-hmm.
But since we have the ability, I really want to see them, touch them, feel them right there.
And I've been struck by very much what you're saying. Not only what I found interesting is like seeing a place and understanding the geography obviously helps pin that down, and you see the Capitol building and this, that, and the other. But we've noticed that even when we've been traveling before, like while in Romania, reading Romanian history, like just like being in a hotel room in a country and reading about that country, somehow it sticks more, even without any external clues. Like I could have read this book anywhere, but I'm here now. We were in Cuba, and a couple of years back, and there's the Bay of Pigs. Let's read about the Bay of Pigs. Like we just drove past it. Like it's much more real. Everything has like a hook you can hang it on all of a sudden, which it really helps both the children but also ourselves. I have a much better understanding of the history that we've observed just as the kids have. So
yeah, and I would imagine that would be one of the best things ever for kids. But who knows? Was it difficult to get them ready for this sort of trip psychologically, or get them into it?
We tried to needle them a little bit for that. Are we really devastating you guys by like, I know you love your neighbor and I know you love the friends down the street, and they seem pretty cool with it, honestly. They do.
For posterity, last week we did some video interviews, and so Holly sat on the couch with the kids and I videoed, and we pretended like we were on a news show, and they're just sitting in our archives like, hi, I'm here with such and such, age such and such, and I'm his mother, and how do you feel about this and whatnot? And so those just kind of went on, stored in the archive, and we will pull them out, in 20 years and be like, see, you told us that we weren't ruining your life, so you can't be mad at us now, kind of thing. But it's kind of neat to see. I hope to do more of those to see how their feelings on the subject evolve, and hopefully continue to get even more enthusiastic, because they seem pretty on board so far.
Mostly they complained about needing to clean up the house to sell it.
Yeah, that was their big complaint.
A lot of cleaning going on, Mom.
Yeah, they had more dishes than normal, and that was the worst thing that we were doing to them. And of course, the missing friends and family can't be overlooked. That's those are the two paths diverge in the yellow wood kind of thing. You can't.
But then the downsizing kind of simplifies things. All of a sudden, you don't have all those dishes or all those cars or that giant house to worry about, right?
Absolutely. Well, that's a journey that we started years before. Before this became kind of a reality in our life, we kind of reached somewhere in our early 30s where we're like, we've been buying progressively bigger houses and progressively more expensive, cars and whatnot. And it hasn't made us less happy, but there's really no reason to feel this made us more happy. It's created complexity. It's created this, that, and the other. And so we started kind of this slow, gradual trajectory 5 or 10 years ago of owning fewer things and being more deliberate and intentional with how we spend our time and our money and our energy.
Yeah.
And this was just kind of the logical extension of that, or maybe the illogical extension of that, depending on how you. It was the last couple of weeks was pretty precipitous, but we had been moving in this direction for a while. Quick, throw it in the van. We have to take it to Goodwill and get out of here.
So did you end up keeping some things back home when you took your trip, Abel?
Yeah.
I say back have a home, but.
Yeah, I mean, like we had a fifth wheel that was about 380 square feet. We could put some stuff in there, and then we put, that's what it was. At my wife's folks' place, there was a small, they have a small grapefruit orchard, and there was like this storage container out there where we were putting some stuff that got flooded, and we lost all that stuff too. So that's why I was foggy to remember. It's like, yeah, we had stuff, but nope, we didn't have that either.
Wow. Yeah, that's one way of going about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And actually, it's funny enough, it wasn't funny at the time, but 10 years ago, Easter weekend, I lost everything in an apartment fire. And that was kind of one of the things that precipitated my health falling apart to some degree as well. And just trying to get out of that was rough, but really important. And if it hadn't been for that, I'm not sure that we would have, sold everything, donated everything and then gone on this trip, it kind of gave me a little bit, after being a few years out of it anyway, it gave me a little bit more confidence that you can actually do that, because everyone tells you you're crazy, right? Didn't everyone say that you guys, oh, that's like, I wish I could do that, but you can't do that, right? Didn't they say something?
Actually, I think I heard that exact quote about 37 times in the last week. But,
Yeah.
Absolutely.
What's that about?
What is that about? About people? Isn't that the crabs pulling the other crab back down and back into the pot?
I guess so.
That's exactly what.
I would argue that I heard a lot of support.
That's true.
Honestly.
That's true. We should be fair. There were an amazing number of
envious support.
Sure. Well, that's cool too.
Our broader message is that, we all have some choice, and not everybody chooses this. A lot of people were supportive of what we want to do, and also said that is not on my bucket list. Like some people said that sounds great. Some people said, I think that sounds crazy, but good for you. And we're just such believers in that we have the ability to make these changes in our lives and do the things that we want to do. And we like to encourage people to pursue their own dreams as well.
Yeah, well, it's even just like taking a sabbatical, right? That's something where it's like people are like, I wish I could do that, but I could never do that. I could never take vacation.
And that is hard to hear people say that. Yeah, because you want to reach out and squeeze them and say, yes, you can.
Yeah.
You can.
But what does it take? Having just done it yourselves, like what are some of the steps that it took to arrange for this trip to actually like get you in the car and then like leave the house ultimately with your kids?
Okay, that's it. It took a bit of faith in that it would work out okay.
Yeah.
I know Chris had a transformative moment when he realized if he stepped out of his day-to-day managerial role in the dojos, that would allow other people to grow instead of him being. Yeah,
there's a good feeling of creating opportunities for other people, but also there's a game, and I wish I could remember who gave me this. Just a simple question: what's the worst that would happen? Because everyone says, well, what if you lose your passports? We don't all die the second we lose our passports. Then there's steps you take, and it's inconvenience, and it's this, that, and the other. What if you miss a plane? What if you get lost? What if, and just playing the game of what's the worst that would happen? What if you lost your job? What if you ran out of money? What if this? What if this? What if this? And if you play that game and you really sit down, maybe even with pen and paper, and you ask yourself what the real, honest to goodness worst that would happen in each of these scenarios, most of them aren't really that bad. And almost all of them, and at the risk of kind of, steering into our book, Resilience Parenting, is we talk about being resilient. We define it as being strong, being adaptable, and having the ability to recover. And so you kind of look at these situations and and if this were to happen to me, well, I just be strong. We're strong enough to overcome X. And then if this were to happen to me, well, that's not something you can stand and meet head on, but we could adapt, we could change, we could go this other direction. And if this other thing happened, this is something even more severe, well, that might knock us flat. But you know what? We have gotten up when knocked down before, and we have faith in our ability to do so. And once you feel confident in your strength and your adaptability and your ability to recover, the world kind of opens up to you to a large extent that you could do anything if you're not afraid of what's going to happen.
One really interesting thing that happened when we went on the road, because we were hearing once again, just like, you can't do that. I wish I could do that or whatever. But then all of a sudden you start running into, even at like these national parks, state parks, or even just on the road, the same people. You start making the same rounds and you meet these people, and they brought their kids, and turns out they've been living on the road. They sold their house 5 years ago or whatever. And then you meet someone else and their friend, and it's this whole community of people who kind of have taken control of their own destiny, not just for themselves, but oftentimes for their whole families. Not to say that having a house in suburbia is a bad thing necessarily, but they're just like, you know what? We've tried that. Let's try something else. And you meet this whole community of people who are kind of doing it this way, like a nomad.
You're absolutely right. We thought we were kind of unique.
Yeah.
We're not, but
No.
it's so fascinating, right? Once you focus your lens on a certain site, then guess what? Out of the forest, out of the woodwork comes that which you're looking at, right?
Well, and I think the broader message is intentionality, and that's a big part of our message. And I know that that's something that comes through in all of the great work that you do, is being intentional. And if this is the house you want to live in, and this is the job you want to have, and this is the the life you want to live, and that's intentional and chosen and deliberate, then that's wonderful and glorious. And if you're living a particular life because you haven't given it enough thought, because you haven't considered alternatives, well, that's kind of where we want to nudge people a little bit and say, hey, you could do something different if you wanted to. So it's not a question of whether a person's traveling or not traveling, or lives in a house, or lives in a fifth wheel, or lives out of a backpack. The question, I think, is, are you doing something intentionally? Are you living a life that you have chosen deliberately?
Do you guys know where you're going? Are you going to move back, like, definitely? Or have you talked about, like, what if we fall in love with some other place? Because that's scary too, right? That's scary in a lot of ways.
We're a little circumspect in our answers, but we have all of our back home, all of our friends, all of our family, all of our community. There's just so many people we love back there. It would hard to not be. We won't be back in the same house because we don't own it anymore. And we might not be in the same neighborhood, but we'll be in that radius so that we can be close to all those great people.
Yeah. Which brings up, like, because community is so important. How do you bring kind of your own culture on the road? Because what happens, right, is like your community just becomes your family because you're the only ones with those shared values on the road. So how do you help protect the values that are important to you guys?
Actually, when we got in the car on the first day, I said, all right, family, time to start brainstorming our new family credo. We have a credo that we say, 3 times a day before meals. It's a reaffirmation of the things that we are looking for, seeking to be. And we've had this going on in our family for about 5 years. And about every year we remake it just to be sure that we are continuing to stay intentional, right? Because we can end up just numb to the automatic process of it all. And my youngest one complained. He said, but I know that credo, Mom. I don't really want to.
He didn't want to memorize it.
I don't want to do it. He said,
it wasn't that long.
It does seem like, as we're experiencing this extremely revolutionary change in our life, that it would make sense we might want to adjust what we're thinking and focusing on. So that's the answer to that. We started working right off the bat of being intentional on how it is that we want to face every day on the road here.
Were there any particular things that changed for this year?
It's still in the works.
Okay.
I was really intrigued to hear my kids say a lot about sticking with it and standing strong despite adversity.
We just brainstormed so far. We have like flexible and present focus, participatory, home is where family is, just ask. Just the idea of like, I don't know if I'm allowed to go there. I don't know if I'm allowed to experience this. Well, let's just go ask. Like there's no harm in asking. Keep striving. That was from our 8-year-old.
Yeah.
Wow. Find it through, persevere, explore, never get lost. It just goes on and on, and so it gives us a starting point. We'll continue, working on that and developing that, and hopefully we'll have something great in a couple of weeks.
I love that. Now, why do you think that's important to have a family credo?
Well, that's, the definition of a culture, I think almost, can I say the definition is definitionally, is, having a set of shared values. And if we want to build community, like you say, within our family first, and then in a broader community, we need to know what those values are. And we touch on this, in our book a little bit, the idea that most of us, I certainly know it's true for us, most of us don't have as good of an understanding of our values as we think we do.
Yeah.
That when we're young, you're in your 20s or whatever, you don't have kids, and you just kind of have the sense of, you have a vague sense of right and wrong, but you only really feel out your values, in my opinion, when they come into conflict, and we always give a super simple example is, you're headed somewhere and you want to be on time, but you want to write a thank you note. And, and there's this service associated with writing a thank you note, and punctuality is having good manners, which is, also an element of integrity. And, which of those wins out in this really tiny, not terribly consequential scenario. But when you start drawing those out into larger and larger scenarios, how would, and I don't think either of those answers is wrong. But if you don't know how you would choose that, how can you make a decision on a bigger issue? And if you happen to be a parent, how can you communicate your values to your kids, because you don't know what they are? And so it's so important for us to kind of know what they are, know how to communicate them to our kids. If you, like I say, if you happen to be a parent, and as you meet new people, whether you're traveling around the world or whether it's a new neighbor or a new, coworker or, someone you interact with, if you don't know what your values are, how do you know if they share your values?
Yeah.
That's a good angle. We hadn't really considered that in the book because we were thinking more about in in a family unit. But boy, that's absolutely true.
If you want to build your community, you build community by drawing people around you that share your values. But that presupposes you know what they are. And I, at 22, I didn't know what my values were in a vague sense. They were kind of nebulous mass, and I wasn't robbing banks, so I obviously had some integrity. But if you tried to pin me down, I couldn't have told you what was important. And so being intentional has really transformed how we live our lives.
And you mentioned integrity and the value of teaching it through story. I think a lot of people just think of story as something that's entertaining or kind of a throwaway, or you don't really pay attention to it and analyze it and see it as something that's valuable. So why and how do you see it that way?
People love stories. I was going to say kids, but really people love stories. That's why we all still watch television shows and movies. It's why we read books. We love stories, and so much more interesting than just getting a fact out of the dictionary is to be pulled along into a tale, and we can relate to it, right? We see ourselves in the story, and then it becomes real. It's vivid.
And it's been a pillar of classical education, since time immemorial. Is that we teach through stories, through allegory. Religious texts teach their message through story.
Absolutely.
And so when you read a story or watch a story or discuss a story, there are lessons in there, and sometimes it's lessons of, hey, look how the protagonist made the right choice, and sometimes it's look how the protagonist made the wrong choice, or started to make the wrong choice and then made the right choice and whatnot. That there are lessons in there. And again, if you have a strong sense of your values and you're reading this book or watching this movie or whatever, is that you have a very gut reaction. You're like, whoa, I don't like the way that person behaved, and the goal is to have a good sense of what that is, and again, be able to communicate that clearly to yourself, to others, to children, etc., and be able to really draw out. There's a lot to be learned without creating a bunch of crisis in your own life or integrity conflicts. You can discuss them and feel them and learn from them without having to. You don't have to go rob a bank to discuss that robbing a bank is a bad moral choice. Mm-hmm. You can read a story about it or watch a movie about it or just talk about it. And that lets us play with all these different experiences without having to have them exist in our own way.
Well, and concepts are tricky. I felt such a great success yesterday. First, I felt failure because I was trying to explain some moral questions to my kids. And I really felt like I wasn't getting anywhere. Like I was getting to like,
Right.
All right. So like, okay, let me tell you a story. And I went into the story of the first time I ever stole a sticker. I stole a sticker from a friend's sister. Oh, and I explained how I walked into the bedroom and I knew I wasn't even supposed to be there, but there it was. And I was really into stickers. This was in 3rd grade. And I took it and I knew it was wrong. And I was like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm sure it's fine. It's just a sticker. I talked myself into it and I put it in my sticker book. I committed to this lie, this horrible thing that I had done by taking off the back and sticking it in there. And the kids are riveted, they're like, and then what happened, Mom? Like, you actually did this? I can't believe it, right? And it was so much more illustrative than me saying, you can't steal things, kid.
Right.
and if she did a good enough job telling the story, they can learn from her, shame in having done that. That's without right. doing it themselves. And, and then, I shared a story that I'm not going to now share. Of a similar experience publicly that I shared, within our family. And so if we do a good job communicating those, we can teach children the lesson so they don't have to do it again. Like we don't have to learn, we don't have to figure this all out on our own.
Yeah.
We can, if we do a good job, we can learn the lessons of the previous generation.
Progress.
We can move forward. That would be ideal.
Well, it's interesting because there's a natural resistance to that, right? Because it's showing your vulnerable underbelly to your kids instead of this like model of perfection where it's like, some parents are like, I never stole anything and you should never steal anything either. So could you compare or contrast those approaches maybe a little bit?
I think that's really common. I think people feel very uncomfortable kind of exposing their weaknesses, their failures, whether it's a business failure or a moral failure or whatever type. because they want to come off as perfect and powerful and
as an authority figure whom you should trust, because that authority figure always has the answers.
But there's two problems with that, or perhaps I should better say there are two things that, positive things that come out of letting that go and being real with your kids is, and everybody for that matter, is that when you are honest about your shortcomings and your foibles and your mistakes, that you, first of all, you create a door for a person to create connection. That now you're real. Now it's not this front. There isn't this wall between us anymore. Like, I'm a real person. I made mistakes, and and I'm just doing the best I can, just like you are. And it improves our ability to connect. Yeah. Again, whether we're talking, parent, child, or whether we're talking, friends or coworkers or spouses or anyone. And then the second byproduct, and this might be a little more specific to the parent-child relationship, is that when you show your truth, that they now realize it's okay. Like, mom did this, mom stole a sticker, and she's still a good person. So when they invariably fail to be perfect, because they are going to live their lives failing to be perfect, just like the rest of us, that doesn't mean to them, I'm an utter failure. It means I made a mistake like mama, and then I'm going to rectify it, and I'm going to do better next time, just like she did. And we take that from them when we have this impression. We create this impossible to follow example, and when they fail to live up to it, they feel like true failures. And that's, I think, something terrible that we sometimes do to children.
Yeah, another point that you guys bring up is the importance, and I don't remember exactly how you phrased it, but modeling being a beginner as a parent in something, right? Because so many, not just parents, but so many adults don't want to be seen as novice in anything. It's like they're fully formed now, they're a person, and I'm not beginning at anything. don't call me a novice, right? What's wrong with that?
And what a shame, right? Because that's announcing that you're done.
Right. It is.
You're done learning, you're done growing. And how sad is that? And don't we all wish part of us to be a child and able to experience and see the world afresh and anew for the first time? It makes me think of the martial arts studios, and a lot of what this book came from is seeing the world in this microcosm of the dojo. And what makes me think of tournament. So we run a tournament twice a year, and the parents are like, "Come on, kids, you really got to challenge yourself to be a part of a tournament." Now, these are parents who are actually training in the studio, so they've already taken the step of saying, "All right, I'm gonna announce to myself that I am completely not good at this." And
put on the white belt, as it were.
Right.
A friend of mine just recently did this for her son. She put on the white belt because she wanted to partake in what her son was doing. Just so admirable, right? And she feels completely awkward, and like she knows that he's like wiping the field with her, so to speak. Okay. But when it comes to tournament, boy, that is just a whole extra level that adults are not willing to put themselves up
little
to.
Johnny, you should go register for tournament, get out there in front of people and potentially embarrass yourself. But I'm going to take pictures from the stands. Like, that's where I'm going to be if you need me, kind of thing. And so it's hard. But again, it's the same thing. If we joke about it, they make toy lawnmowers for a reason, because people want to do kids want to do what their parents do. And so if you want your child to be a lifelong learner, then for that matter, if you want the people around you, encourage the people around you to be lifelong learners, then you should model being a lifelong learner, and you don't need to be shy about it. It's like, hey, guess what? I just started this, and I'm learning a new language, and I found a tutor, and I'm not any good, but I'm doing this, I'm learning this, or I'm taking this class, or I'm going back to school, or I'm reading a book, and I'm trying to better myself and grow, not, on an ongoing basis for the rest of my life. And that's what we should all do. It's how you got to where you are. It's how we got to where we are. It's how we, grow and evolve and become something more than we were yesterday, is by continuing to seek out mentors and seek out resources and grow. And we need to be really, I think, again, going back to intentional, we need to be really intentional about that. And then we need to make sure we share that with our kids and with our community, and encourage them to do the same.
Yeah, living in several RVs for a while made me realize that, number one, they break down all the time. But number two, there's kind of a reason for that. It's like, once you start traveling, especially going on the road, you can't protect yourself like you can at home from challenges and new opportunities and different things and failing publicly. sometimes, right? Just like horribly.
It's the best way to fail.
Yeah. So it forces it upon you. But I realized, you know, because I'm not really my dad is a Mr. Fix-It type, and I'm just like, I don't have that as much. I don't have that natural drive to want to fix those physical things. But on the road with an RV that's breaking down or a truck or whatever, it's like I am on that thing, and it's the only thing I'm focused on. And that just doesn't happen at home. And that's a personality change. You know what I mean? That's a fundamentally different thing. And so kudos to you guys for not only doing that to yourselves, but also your kids. You're all going to be failing together, and there probably isn't anything better bonding than that, right?
That's our new motto.
Let's fail together.
We're all failing together. I'm gonna get t-shirts made that say that.
But it's so important, right? I think a big part of this book and the problem that made it come to be is that we are afraid of failing, and especially of letting our children fail.
We as a society.
We as a society.
Sure.
Yeah. That where we find ourselves now with kids who just maybe aren't as resilient as we like them to be. Mm-hmm. They seem to be stuck on the sofa through age 26, past the time when the insurances run out, or just unable to even say hello to a stranger out from behind a parent's legs. Is that we haven't given them an opportunity to fail enough. Mm-hmm. We're so worried about what's going to happen, and they're going to be okay. Like that's, as you put it, watching your entire apartment burn up in the end made you stronger. It forged you into a new being.
Those who are most successful amongst us are not successful in spite of their failures, but oftentimes because of their failures. Sure. But they've learned things, they've grown, and more able to move on more powerfully because of it.
Comfortable is not the goal. I think that needs to be. Would you write that on our list?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Comfortable is not the goal.
One thing I just wanted to bring up, because you kind of mentioned it was emotional reading through your book, the story of your son dropping the plate and how you guys handled it. If you don't mind, would you mind just telling the Cliff Notes version of that?
Sure. We had a son. I want to say we still have him. Sorry. Our son, he's still around, I swear. I think he was about 6 at the time. And he's our middle child. And we were at a buffet at a reasonably nice restaurant. I want to say we were in Daytona Beach.
That's right.
And in the middle of winter, the place is largely empty. And we were working our way through the buffet, and we turn our back for a while, and we hear a plate crash. And I turn around, and there's our 6-year-old with a plate of food. And he's a little bit mortified and a little bit uncomfortable and whatnot. And so you kind of look at, there's a smorgasbord of a buffet, if you will, of options of how you can respond to this. You can, you could punish the child for having, done this. You could console the child. You could, there's so many different things that you might consider. But obviously part of your action needs to be predicated on what their reaction, where are we and where are they? So we went over and we talked and whatnot. And so, the first step, of course, was finding somebody and offering to help clean it up and kind of minimizing the mess and making appropriate apologies to the staff for the mess and the waste that we created. And then we talked about it, like, why did this happen? Right? It was all about the educational experience. Why did this happen? Well, it's a buffet designed for adults, and he's not tall enough. And so he was trying to balance things in ways that, that he couldn't do. And so how can we do better next time? Well, we can, place a plate here, we can ask for help, or we can get a stool, or, there's a handful of different things so we kind of brainstormed options.
And I want to interject. Part of the why also was, why did it matter to us that this not happen? Why is it even a big deal?
Yes, thank you.
That in order to make a lesson have any kind of weight, just like, you're not supposed to break plates. No, let's talk about it's not good to waste these materials. And it's
we made work for other people.
Made work for other people.
We want to tread lightly on the earth, and we do. We want to minimize, the kind of waste of food and the waste of materials, and then obviously the inconvenience that we've created for the people. And so that's why we want to avoid that. So there's kind of the why and the how, right? So we're going to. And thank you for bringing that up. So we talked about why. We wanted to not waste why we didn't want this to happen again, and then how we could go about making sure that it didn't. Mm-hmm. And that was kind of like round one, and he ended up with a plate full of food and had a great breakfast.
Yeah, and it was important that he be part of that process. Like, okay, you help us brainstorm. What could we do better in the future? So he owned this thing. It wasn't a lecture, but a conversation, right? And that's the sign of a good teaching moment. but we could tell that it wasn't over, like we ate the meal and he was not himself. And so we said, well, what's going on? What are you feeling right now? What's eating at you? I like that. So many buffet metaphors go flying.
Smorgasbord of metaphors.
Indeed.
He was embarrassed. He was painfully embarrassed that everybody was watching him and looking at him and thinking bad things about him because he had made this mistake, and he couldn't shake it. So then Chris had a genius, wonderful teaching idea. He's a great teacher. He said, all right, I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to tell me, just describe any person in this room right now, any one of them, not the family at the table. And he couldn't. And there was a pause and a moment, and we waited for it. And then the light bulb went off. Like, he opened his eyes. He's like, I get it. Nobody's looking at me. Nobody saw me. Nobody cares.
And with that realization, he gained the space to, to kind of be himself and not worry quite so much. And so you kind of take this lesson about how to not break plates, and then you turn it into how we shouldn't be wasteful in general. And then you kind of take it, up one more notch, and you turn it into, how can we be more comfortable with our interactions with the world, and how we can kind of create a greater degree of independence and not so dependent on other people's opinions of us.
Yeah, we thought we just needed to increase his skills at a buffet, to make him a more independent human being. But in the end, he needed the independence from worrying too much about what other people think about him. And
I think we all need that.
Exactly.
I'll let you know when I perfect that.
Yeah, right on. Well, how about this? There's another piece that you kind of mentioned as well, that, and I think it takes place in the dojo, of the child that won't get out from behind her mother's legs, and then what happens when that person's 18, what happens down the road, and how that actually manifests. And it's actually not so different, but having you explain it that simply, I thought was really powerful.
I appreciate that. Yeah. We saw this, gosh, I must have seen this 1,000 times. It's common. Yeah. And what's interesting is the parental reaction. So you have this 3-year-old or 4-year-old or 5-year-old, and, obviously the older, the more awkward it seems. Child hiding between his mother's leg or his father's leg or whatever, and refusing to come out to meet a stranger, even one that has been vouched for by their parents. Come out, say hi, high five, or fist bump, or shake hands, or whatever, make eye contact and whatnot. And it almost feels like every year a larger percentage of the young people are unable to do this. And then the pandering that parents tend to give to this, there's a sense of that's cute or that's adorable or whatever. And this is where you get into this dichotomy between connectedness and independence. And as parents, we want our children to be very connected, both to ourselves and to the rest of our family and to the community at large. And we also want them to be independent. We want them to be able to go out and work and interact positively and do the things that they want to do. And I think there is this myth that these two characteristics are mutually exclusive, that a person is either connected or independent, like there's a finite quantity. And part of our message is that's just simply not true, that a person can be very independent or very connected, and ideally they can be very both. Very both, can I say it that way? They can be both very connected and very independent. So what we want to do is look at that child who is obviously very connected to mom or dad, and realize that child right now needs to develop independence. Like that, the best thing that mom and dad can do for that child right now is encourage them and help them and give them the tools necessary to become more independent. And obviously, and that it feels like in this era, in this 21st century parenting environment, that's where more people are. And perhaps it's a reaction to the way that kids were raised in the 50s. But again, I feel it's held onto by this false belief that if I encourage my child to be independent, I will decrease their connectedness. And it's just not true. The more independent you can help them to be while simultaneously cultivating your connectedness, the stronger and that they will be. And you can only truly have a wonderful connected relationship between two people who are independent. Like if you think about the best amongst us, they are both independent and connected. And if you think about the best relationships, whether it's a parent-child relationship or whether it's spouses or best friends or whatever, each of those people can interact with the world independently and will do so, but they have this deep connection built from that. If you, frankly, I believe the correct term is codependence, is that person who can't interact with the other person. And that's not what we want for our children. We want them to be independent and connected, both.
Indeed. We make the point in the book that the best way to do that is to approach your relationship with your child as a teacher.
Yes.
And a lot of parents are afraid of that. I could never teach my kids, but I want to hold you and shake you. Just like we said at the beginning. Yes, you can. Doing that, since they were born, think about all the things you have taught them and are teaching them. And we truly believe, being teachers in many ways, that the best way to create independence is by giving them strength through learning, right? Teach them whatever it is that you need them to learn. And then by doing that in the good way, now you want to be a good kind of a teacher, right? Sure. They're the good ones and the bad ones. And if you can manage to be a good teacher and go out and learn that skill, there are ways to learn it, then you're going to find that the connection that you develop with your child or with whomever you wish to be better connected is going to just be wonderful. So I think that's what the path to get to where Chris is talking about, of being both independent and connected. If you can do that by being a teacher to your child.
I love that. What about technology, though? Because every year it seems to get a little bit hairier, and not just technology itself, because obviously it's a great thing. It's allowing us to do this right now from a public library on a phone, right? And I'm up at 8,000 feet somewhere in Colorado. It's amazing. But culture and friendships have been quantified. And now they compete against each other and just like what. This world didn't exist 10 years ago or so, right? But now it definitely does, and there's no getting around that. So how do you see managing technology as a tool as opposed to something that's leeching the life from us and the next generation over the next few years?
Well, and like so many things, I think the answer is a balance, right? That to the extent that we can use technology to have a conversation, from thousands of miles away, and someone can, travel around the world with their kids and they can still Skype with their grandparents on a regular basis. That's powerful, awesome. Right?
Yeah.
And to the extent that you have unique hobbies that you can find your tribe, find your community virtually around the world is powerful and wonderful. I think the problem becomes when we start substituting virtual friends for real friends. And so,
if I may, when we're with real friends and we allow the desire of technology and whatever it has to offer pull us away from those times, we recognize when we're here now. Sure. we use technology to get here, and now we just need to be here, right? And I'm sorry to interrupt you, I was so excited about that.
And so we want to help our children, and then obviously going back to our point on modeling, we want to do it by we'll start that by living our life this way also, is finding a way to get all the good and none of the bad. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation at all, is that we're going to use it to communicate with people who are far away. We're going to use technology to build our tribe, worldwide, and find the people who's resonate with our message and find people whose message resonates with us. And then we're going to stop there. And we're not going to use it incessantly and nonstop. And we're not going to prioritize our, Instabook friends over our real friends. And we're going to make sure that we teach our children, yes, to use technology for the things that it's great for, but also to make sure that they develop the interpersonal communication skills that are critical to everything that we do. Mm-hmm. If you want to have a successful, functional life, you need to be good at working with people, talking to people, communicating with people, empathizing with people. Whether that's socially and building your connections and your relationships that are going to make your life meaningful, or just from a practical standpoint, if you want to be successful in your career, regardless of what that career is, you have to interact with people positively, even if it's just your boss and or your clients and or the HR department. You need to know how to do that. So we need to make sure.
And in full sentences.
In full sentence. Did I not use full sentence?
No, I just mean that.
We need to stop talking in acronyms, right?
And memes and
I want to figure out
emojis.
I guess
emojis.
That's my one caveat asterisk is that I want to be able to use emojis in my daily communication. Like I want to turn to someone next to me and be like smiley face.
You read an email this morning, including all the emojis.
Just articulate.
And it was beautiful.
Yeah, right. It's like, it was really great meeting you yesterday, smiley face. But that you don't get the full message.
Smiley face with tears.
My absolute favorite thing, the 21st century, the only positive thing, my favorite thing about the 21st century is emojis. I just want to lay that out there.
I know that about you.
Oh, it's true. It's true. Yeah, if you go back a little ways, you get indoor plumbing, huge advocate of indoor plumbing. Then there's all this stuff.
Germ theory, though. Don't forget that.
I'm not a big, it is. It's nice. Okay, so indoor plumbing, germ theory, and then and emojis. And I think those are kind of the pinnacles of mankind.
I think that's fair. That might be fair. We're almost out of time, but just really quickly, especially Holly, if you wouldn't mind, but actually both you guys, because it seems like not just self-defense, but a lot of things have been kicked out of schools, arts, music. It's just like, why do these things even matter? But I know these things do matter for you guys. And myself, I often wonder where I learned discipline, not in the sense that I was disciplined, but I have learned how to learn music and other athletics and other things like that. And I think a lot of it was from Kempo in the dojo when I was a little kid, and I didn't even do it past junior high.
Studied Kempo. That's great.
Yeah, I didn't even, but I did Kempo. I played in little bands and a lot of stuff that seemed like it didn't matter because I was too little for it to matter to most people, right? Because how could you possibly be changed by that? But anyway, just a few words on why this multidisciplinary education is so important for kids and adults.
Okay, well, I like you found that my discipline within martial arts and in music, for sure.
Cool.
It's funny you mentioned all the technology, right? I think that the need to have information in our minds is rapidly decreasing. It's at our fingertips at all times. Isn't that fascinating? So even more so, we're going to need a little less of that book learning stuff. I don't want to downplay how important it is, of course, to know your reading and your writing and your arithmetic. But in the end, those lessons that really formed me were the ones that I got from those extracurriculars. It's absolutely true.
And if I can add to that, I think that we have so many resources at our fingertips now that as parents, it's very tempting to start farming out the raising of our children. We have great schools, and you send your kid to a great school, and you send them to a great soccer team, and you send them to a great Kempo program, and your martial arts program, and you send them to all these things, and all of that's wonderful, and all of that is part of what makes you and me, and all of the things that we developed. But we as parents need to also make sure that we are the glue that holds all that together, and we need to make sure that our child's getting what they need from all of those things. I believe it's part of your message that you are the expert of you. And there are great resources out there, and you should avail yourselves of them. That you should learn what people write, and learn what doctors say, and learn what's available. And you should read the Wild Diet, and you should see all the wonderful things out there. But then you need to figure out what works for you. So as you're raising your children, you should put them in martial arts, and you should put them in music, and you should send them to a great school. You should do all of these things. But then you need to take ownership of the most important things, which is going to be their developing of their learning and their service and their integrity, developing their values and their discipline. There's some things you can't farm out. You can reinforce with these outside sources and should, but you need to make sure that you guide it and that you control it and make sure that it's going the direction that it needs to go for your child to have a successful life.
I like that.
I do too. Yeah. Well, we're just about out of time, but please tell, and congratulations, your now best-selling book. Where's the best place to find that and the rest of your work?
Thank you. They can jump onto Amazon.com, and our website for the book specifically is resilienceparenting.info, and that's resilienceparenting.info. If they're curious about our sabbatical, they can jump onto 5backpacks.family.
We would love to hear from people about their experiences like yours, Abel. It's so amazing. And your encouragement will absolutely be helpful as we go along on these wonderful challenges. And then say hello from time to time. It'd be great.
Love it. Well, your work is so important. The world needs it right now. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Abel, it's been a pleasure.
Thank you. I hope you like it.
This episode is brought to you by Wild Superfoods and listeners like you. Whether you're looking to drop a few pounds, maximize performance for your next competition, or simply stay young and energetic, you need a name you can trust. That's why my wife Allison and I created Wild Superfoods. Our nutraceuticals and cutting-edge health supplements are literally the products we've been taking ourselves daily to upgrade our nutrition and optimize our health for the past 3+ years. And we're extremely excited to say Wild Superfoods is finally ready for you, with much more to come. When you buy from Wild Superfoods, you're supporting a small family business, not a massive faceless corporation. We don't have any investors or stockholders to please, so our priority is you. We want to help you become as healthy as you possibly can be. Also, starting our own family company, it's kind of cool, has made it so we can create these shows for you without outside sponsors clouding our message of health. So if you believe in what we do, please check out Wild Superfoods. We think you'll dig it. And as a listener of Fat Burning Man, you can save over $80 on a one-time purchase or save over $128 when you select the subscribe and save option. Also, you can get free access with subscribe and save to our Fat Burning Tribe coaching and meal planning community. That place is awesome. I'll see you in there. It's usually at least $27 a month. So check out subscribe and save from Wild Superfoods if you want to get the tribe for free. We think you'll like it. So all you have to do is head on over to wildsuperfoods.com to order your very own health boosting goodies for a big time discount. One more time, that's wildsuperfoods.com. Thanks again for listening. Well, hey there, listener. This is Abel one more time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of the Fat Burning Man Show. If you liked it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button wherever you might be listening to or watching this show right now. And if you have a second, please leave me a quick review for the Fat Burning Man Show. I read every single one of them, and every time you leave a review, it gives us a little boost in the rankings, and that helps other people find this show. And if you can think of someone else who might enjoy and benefit from this free show, please take a second to share it with a friend or a family member. And if they're like, what is this Fat Burning Man thing? That's a really silly name. You could be like, you're right, but here's the deal. We've recorded over 250 episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show with thought leaders in health from all over the world. And so far, we've won 4 awards, hitting #1 in health in more than 8 countries internationally. We have more than 30 million downloads already, but we're just getting started. I can't believe any of this, by the way, and couldn't do any of this without you, so thanks once again. But here's some more good news. You can download and listen to every single episode of the Fat Burning Man Show for free with 0 outside advertisements, no outside sponsors, and no corporate overlords. All you have to do is type in fatburningman.com. We'll give you a second here just to type it in, fatburningman.com. And you'll get all the show notes, transcripts, and video and audio versions for all the past episodes of the Fat Burning Man Show for free. Better yet, enter your email at fatburningman.com, sign up for my newsletter, and I'll even send you a quick start guide so you can take your health into your own hands right now, along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes as a special thanks for signing up. Once again, just go to fatburningman.com right now, enter your best email to get your free goodies with a bonus surprise straight to your inbox. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening once again, and have a great week.